Hello, people of the internet. My name is JD Shadow. The person who I'm about to discuss has me blocked on Twitter. I do not know why that is, but she has me blocked on Twitter. It's a person by the name of Jessica Price, or on Twitter as DELPHIN777. You can see it right now. For some reason, she has me blocked. I've never interacted with her. I've never talked to her. I've never tagged her on Twitter. But I'm pretty sure that once I am done talking to you about what has been going on these past couple of days or so, or day or so, I'm not sure how long this has been going on, she will probably not be in any hurry to unblock me, or the person who she was talking to. I would assume she might be blocking people, seeing as this is how she works, because not too much has to be done in order to actually see tweets on Twitter. The first thing you could do is to go into incognito mode on Google Chrome. This lets you be able to look at the tweets that she has put out. The other way is to archive those tweets. That way, not only do you get to see the tweets, but you cannot just run away from the tweets by simply deleting them and pretending you never said those things, which is exactly what people have done. And not only that, but someone on the Guild Wars 2 Reddit page, and not many people are siding with her on this whole thing, and yeah, it is not really looking good for her public image in any sort of way, because the person who we are talking about in particular is the narrative designer at ArenaNet and was hired, if the Redditors are getting this correctly, around Path of Fire launch. Now, before I get to the situation that is going on right now, I want to tell you about a Guild Wars 2 content creator by the name of Deroir, D-E-R-O-I-R. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. However, I hope that all is forgiven if I have so. Deroir is fairly well known in the Guild Wars 2 community. He focuses on high-level gameplay and lore, and he also streams on Twitch and is a Guild Wars 2 ArenaNet partner, and even has an NPC named after him in the game. I don't think after this he's going to have those statuses as far as I'm concerned anymore, although if that were to happen, then it would be extremely dangerous going forward, and I'm going to go into full explanation as to why that is a big problem. Because this is not just some random person on Twitter who is talking and saying these things. This is somebody who has enjoyed the game and has applied to be a partner and was accepted and is pretty well known. So I'm not completely sure that this was the right thing to do, and yes, we'll get to what exactly the responses were and why this all blew up in everybody's faces here. He is the person that was responding to a Twitter thread that Jessica Price had posted to her Twitter account, and I want to read to you what she said in full via the Reddit post that went into detail about what exactly she said that sparked this whole thing to go on, and why I'm feeling the need to post a video about this, because this is something that I feel needs to be addressed, and hopefully the right people do watch this and will react accordingly, hopefully in a positive manner, and to address this concern, because there's a lot of concerns that need to be addressed here. Now, in all fairness, I have not played Guild Wars 2 in a long time. There are some very personal reasons why that is, and also some very preference reasons. I have enjoyed Final Fantasy XIV a hell of a lot more for their systems and how they incorporate a lot of things. That is not to say I would never play Guild Wars 2 again. It is just right now my interest in the game had gone down in recent months. However, this here would make my interest in logging onto the game again go downhill a little bit more. Jessica Price in a Twitter thread went on to say, quote, "Since I spent all kinds of time saying it on a Reddit AMA, and I haven't talked about actual game dev on Twitter in a while, here's a thread about writing for the PC character in an MMO. The dirty secret is I'm not sure if it's possible to make an MMORPG or CRPG character compelling. because people have different expectations about what that character will be, as opposed to a pre-designed character in a single-player game. People booting up BioShock know that they're playing Jack. People starting Dishonored know they're playing Corvo. People beginning Tomb Raider know they're playing Lara Croft. So in those games, you have more wiggle room to make protagonists an actual character. Whereas in an RPG, where the player chooses all kinds of character options and names their characters and designs their face and so on, they feel more ownership over that character. They're not playing a character you designed, they're playing a character they designed. So if Jack or Laura or Corvo says or does something the player doesn't feel that they would say or do, the player is more forgiving, because they have the expectation that they're piloting a character someone else created. NB, I don't know what NB means, but whatever, that I'm not talking about overall plot objectives or quests. Players know going in that the game is going to be telling them what to do, and their character is going to do it, and that holds true even when they've created the character. But the interpersonal stuff, the PC reactions, players respond strongly to. Some people don't like it if they think their character is responding in ways that make them too much of an asshole. Some don't like it if their character's responses seem weak. So basically, most things that you do writing-wise to give a character character are going to upset a large contingent, maybe even a majority of your players. So, I know I've said this before on Twitter, but it's still going to weird people out, so please bear with me. You have to construct your MMO/RPG PC characters dialogue as if they were Bella Swan from Twilight. Really weird comparison there, but we'll move on. To be clear, I don't think Twilight is good writing. I don't think Bella Swan's a well-constructed book character. And I think people who criticize Twilight for the latter are correct, but also missing the reason for Twilight's popularity. Because Twilight isn't the love story of Bella and Edward, it's the experience of being loved by Edward, which is why Bella is constructed the way she is. Bella Swan is a carefully constructed blank space, with just enough personality to function. All of her personality traits are chosen to avoid preventing the reader from inserting themselves into the space she holds in the story. She is a bit of a klutz, but just enough to make her endearing, not enough to prevent her from actually doing anything the story needs her to do. She's a little bit awkward just enough to be relatable, but not enough to actually hinder her, and so on. And essentially, we have to write the player character in an MMO/RPG the same way. Specifically in Guild Wars 2, in the Living World, we can write the commander with a bit of worry, exasperation, a hint of impatience, a touch of, okay, I'm done fooling around with this crap and I'm going to take charge, but most of the lines have to be pretty devoid of personality, because if we give them too much personality, it might clash with how the player is imagining their commander. We'll get to why she's wrong here in a moment. But we'll continue with the rest of this whole thing because it goes on and on and on. The answer to that, and I don't know, maybe this is too much of how the sausage gets made, but what do you want from me? Any sense of shame I had burned out not long ago, sleight of hand. We suggest that the commander has a personality in how the other characters interact with and react to them. Even there, we have to be super careful. We can't even have them directly characterize the commander. You rarely hear the character say anything about what the commander always does or doesn't do, except when it's purely factual because it's something the game design forced the PC to do. E.g., the commander always finds a way, because literally, if you don't, we'll resurrect you until you do. We have NPCs react to you with affection or irritation or leerness or whatever to suggest that your character has regular habits and ways of interacting that build these relationships, but for the most part, they don't. The PC is who you imagine them to be, and the NPCs react in a way that have to feel personal and build a story, while not conflicting with whatever you're imagining your character's personality to be. We want you to project, which means the writing the NPCs' relationships with the PC basically like writing horoscopes. It has to feel specific and personal while actually being universal. So a very delicate sketches of non-objectable personality traits, like a hint of DIYness or world weirdness. B. NPCs that behave as if your character has a distinct personality while not doing so in ways that actually identify what it is. C. One-sided relationship building. Voila, an MMO/RPG character. Needless to say, a lot of the color comes from NPCs' relationships with each other, even though we try to keep it centered on the PC as much as possible. It is a constant, very fragile calibration. We don't always get it right. Incidentally, if you've played episode 3 of the season of Guild Wars 2 Living World, you've seen this sort of writing taken to an extreme in Joga's final monologue. Almost everything he says is about actions the game has forced you to take, not your own character traits. And he's clearly projecting when he talks about what you were thinking, but it's hopefully constructed in a way that feels personal, like he's twisting the knife. Now, I could go on a really big rant about how wrong she is. And keep in mind, she's the one that posted the Twitter thread. No one else within ArenaNet posted this, so who else are you going to respond to? There was really no one else in Guild Wars 2 that has actually brought this up, so there was no one else that anyone could respond to. But keep in mind, if she was a male, then that would not matter. The incident that came after this would not have changed, as it pertains to response that she got, that she eventually responded to, which is the reason why this video is even being made. And yes, there is a reason why we bring the gender up, because it is interjected into the discussion by her, and we'll get to how that is in just a moment. However, even though she has a bit of a point here in that you have to think of MMORPG characters, player characters, a little differently than single-player static games, she goes about thinking of these things in a completely backwards way. First of all, she's comparing a video game to a book. You are not within the shoes of the person who is in a book. She is a static character. Bella Swan is a static character. No matter what you do, that book's story or a movie or a TV show will never change. It is something that you watch. You don't interact with that character. You do not control where that person ends up going. With a video game, it is a bit of a different medium. It is a interactive form of media. If you don't want to do that living story right away, you don't have to do that. There is nothing preventing you from doing something else or leveling up a little bit more or going on a raid or something else altogether. So that comparison goes completely out the window when you take that into account. These are not the same thing as books. That it's the same comparison that people make when they try to say why Let's Plays should not be allowed on YouTube because of copyright issues, because there is a bit of a difference between interactive work and static work that will never change no matter how you choose to view that piece of content. And more to the point, ArenaNet has coded Guild Wars 2 player characters differently according to the race and gender that you choose. Like, for instance, Chars might react a bit differently than humans might to a particular thing that happens. They might have different dialogue. Sure, the end result might be the same, and that is something that games that give you an illusion of choice and consequence for your choice have been criticized for. And yes, we are looking at you, Mass Effect 3. The feeling that somebody might react differently from someone else, or they might have different lines from another race or gender, is going to make people who are playing the game want to play other races because they might have a different experience just for the simple notion that they say something's different. That's why when I played Guild Wars 2 and I played the Living Story, I thought that, hey, you might want to watch these videos in addition to someone else's, because quite frankly, that other person might be playing as a human and Chars might react a little bit differently or might have a different personality given their race. That is the same thing with most MMORPGs, but this is very true with Guild Wars 2 because Guild Wars 2 is focused a lot about their story. You will notice that Guild Wars 2 players are vastly worried about being spoiled, about anything at all. A piece of gear and that name of the gear, that might be a spoiler to some people. They don't want to know what that name is before they go see it. Whereas you would see people in World of Warcraft, they're not as concerned about that because they're worried about getting world first, they're worried about the path to the next level cap, stuff like that, and the next raid tiers and the path they need to get to in order to become sufficient in raid groups. Guild Wars 2 doesn't necessarily have that thing, so they are focused more along the lines of surprising people with what they have to show people. But I'm getting a little bit sidetracked here because I do believe that she is also wrong when we bring up the series that I had just discussed, which is Mass Effect. Now, you can say your case about Mass Effect 3 and the subsequent claim Andromeda all you want, but when the game first came out, when the series was on its stride, the reason why is because you had the illusion that choices mattered within the game. Your choices directed how the story went. That is a single player game. However, not only could you make your character look the way you want it to, but your choices actually mattered, and your character reacted in a way that was directly influenced by your choices. Your choices could be the death of someone else within your party, and you would not be able to get them back for the rest of the game series, and your character would react accordingly. That is something that, even though it's a single player game, it delves into the notion that you could create that character how you want it, and they would still be able to have a personalized way of reacting to that particular scene that is going on, dependent on your choices. So it is fully possible for that to occur. Now, whether or not that needs to occur in an MMORPG remains to be seen, because we have not really seen that in an MMORPG yet. We have seen that phasing in World of Warcraft has done that game a little bit better, because you feel like what you are doing is making an actual impact in that game. And I do believe that making a character become more personalized is not really that hard. You see in Final Fantasy XIV, for instance, that you can also personalize how that character sounds. Now, there is sort of a limitation on that regard because of developer time and whatnot, and you can't have too many options because you don't want to bog down your development team. However, that and the inclusion of some choices that the NPCs might react to that might define how you want your character to be, even though it doesn't really have any impact on the actual story going forward, shows you that it can be done to a certain extent, and it can be expanded upon if developers choose to do this. Now, I'm not focusing on this particular thing because she is a female, but because she is the one that brought up these points, and on a public forum like Twitter, she should be able to have critique and criticism toward her points as long as they are constructive and focus on what she has said instead of just flaming her and resorting to vitriolic misogyny. But yes, someone had responded, and that's when we get to Deroir's response to this. Now, his response is this, quote, "Really interesting thread to read. However, allow me to disagree slightly. I don't believe the issue lies in the MMORPG genre itself, as your wording seemingly suggests. I believe the issue lies in the constraints of the living story narrative design. When you want the outcome to be the same across the board for all players' experiences, then yes, by design, you are extremely limited in how you can construct the personality of the PC. But if instead players were given the option to meaningfully express their character through branching dialogue options, which also aren't just on the checklist for an achievement that forces you to do all dialogue options, then perhaps players would be more invested in the role-playing aspect of that particular MMORPG. Nonetheless, I appreciate the insightful thread." Now, let me back up for a second and let me reassure, and I want to have everybody look at that tweet or that line of tweets and see that in no way was he actually attacking Jessica. There was no way that he was even remotely attacking her. He was providing a counterpoint. This is something that not only content creators but critics should be allowed to do. If I was suddenly not allowed to criticize another content creator or another game because, hey, the person did not necessarily agree with my opinions, and instead try to attack me because of some misconception, then that is a very dangerous road to go down. And there was another reason why I want to create this video, because she had actually responded to this, saying, quote, "Thanks for trying to tell me what we do internally, my dude." And I don't know what that emote is. Deroir said in response, "You're getting mad at my obvious attempt at creating dialogue and discussion with you, instead of just replying that I am wrong or otherwise correct me and my false assumptions. It is really just disheartening for me. You do you, though. I'm sorry, and if offended, I'll leave you to it." Then she went on her Twitter account and quoted his tweet and ran it to it, saying, quote, "Today, in being a female game dev, allow me, a person who does not work with you, explain to you how to do your job." Which he responded with, "So much for an open discussion, I guess. I meant no disrespect at all. Never did, never will. Never did I imply I knew better. Nor has this anything to do with gender. Never did, never will. I will retract my comment because obviously I'm in the wrong forum for this kind of talk." And yes, she's getting some flack for this, and I'm pretty sure she is going to block a lot of people, because she does say in her Twitter profile that she does block often. And like I said, she has blocked me with absolutely no reason behind it, though if she sees this, she's probably not going to be in any hurry to unblock me. But I want to talk about that blocking thing for just a second. She is in a position in a game company, in a company. Why do people who are heads of companies like this allow their people on Twitter to do this? This sets a bad standard for companies. And ArenaNet has had their degree of employees who will very much love to post their personal political beliefs on Twitter, and they are really dead set on those beliefs, to the point where somebody might think they would be uncomfortable in just discussing things with them. And this does absolutely nothing to fix this. And Peter Freeze does come to her defense in one of the Twitter threads, saying that also see lopsided defense of mansplaining in your mentions versus outpouring of sympathy for misunderstood dude in his. When Jessica Price is asking why did Deroir wanted to respond to what he had a criticism about in her statements. And when asked what kind of way of looking at the world is that, we didn't ask for our fans' input when we put our thoughts on social media, customer relations, he responded saying that these are our private social media accounts. Imagine you're an astronomer and you start sharing some things you've learned in the past few months since you began a research project observing Saturn, only have observation techniques explained to you by a layman. Now, there's a lot wrong with what he has to say, a lot wrong with what he had said, but he also went on when he was trying to defend her on her own quoted post, saying that I don't get this stuff directed at me and I've been working on living world narrative content since 2012, and later, maybe rightfully no one takes me seriously, but I've never gotten my job explained to me the way I see happening to women who try to share their thoughts and insights online. And of course, she is continuing to say that she should not be criticized by anybody, and she keeps going on and on trying to defend why she went to attack this content creator on Twitter and abroad. So let's get to Peter Freeze's comment first, because I think it's pretty easy for me to explain why he is so wrong. One, he's not the one who made these tweets in the first place. She was the one who provided that insight. So when you put that on a public Twitter account, keep in mind, until she blocks you, and even if she blocks you, there are ways in order to view that what I said is to put your viewpoints out there for public consumption and public criticism and public critique, which basically means is that anybody has a right to respond to you until, of course, you do what you have done, which is, again, a very abhorrent thing to do, and this is a very dangerous thing to do, and I'll get to why it is so dangerous here in just a moment. But keep in mind, she is the narrative designer on a major game. Why is she allowed to do this, and why are people coming to her defense? Keep in mind, Deroir never did anything wrong. All he even did was say why he believes that MMORPGs can have branching dialogues, can have branching personalities. the viewpoints of the character can change and how it could be done. Now, to be quite fair, Peter Fries does say later on, saying that I think his imagined version of a branching MMO would be prohibitively resource and manpower intensive were it even feasible. And yeah, that is a reasonable thing to say. So why didn't he say that to begin with instead of doubling down on what Jessica Price was trying to do? Why did he bring up the gender card? Why did he even bring it up, especially when it was never brought up to begin with? He kept saying, oh, well, I was never criticized like this. Well, you never posted anything like that, and furthermore, you don't think you've ever been criticized on the Guild Wars 2 subreddit or in any of these videos or any of the content partners videos? You've never been criticized before? You've never been called out on anything before? You have a lot to learn if you think for 1 second that we had ignored you all these years. Trust me, if you said something like this and somebody respectfully said why it may have worked and you responded the way Jessica Price did, pretty sure we're going to get on you the same way that Jessica Price is seeing things blowing up in her face now. And while it's kind of admirable that maybe you're just sticking up for a friend or a coworker, if she's doing something like this, you should also be calling her out on it and saying that doesn't represent the entirety of ArenaNet as a whole, instead of saying what you are saying now. Remember, content creators can be critics as well. Just take the person who just passed about a month ago, Total Biscuit. He was never a game designer, but he was a game critic. That's what critics do. That is their job. That is what they're paid to do. They are paid to not only show you the game, but also give their interpretation of what they see and what they thought about the game. If they did not like the game, it is within their right to tell you that and tell you why. The game developers have no right to tell you what you can and cannot say about the game. They do not have the right to go to you and say you should not criticize us. That is something called fair use. That is something that if you do that, you run into the risk of trying to manipulate what people will say about your game, and thereby making people become untrustworthy. This is a very dangerous road to go down on, especially when you take into account some of the viewpoints that some of the other Guild Wars 2 developers have said throughout the years. And yes, there are some people I do follow on the Guild Wars 2 dev team, and some people I do respect, and I don't mean this in a way that makes it appear that I am trying to personally attack them. However, it does stand that this kind of ad hominem attack is just asking for trouble. This is the same thing as what the BioWare dev did when he attacked Total Biscuit after his death, and he got flack for it, and all of a sudden he went on private. He knew he did something wrong. He knew he had said something he shouldn't have said, whether or not he meant it or not. And instead of facing the music and just saying, hey, I apologize, he went on private, because we all know he meant what he said. He just didn't want to have to face the music there. And before anyone tries to say it, no, you cannot compare this of what I just said with what is going on with Channel Awesome, because if you did not do something of that sort, then you know what? You shouldn't apologize. You should state your case as to why you shouldn't apologize. In this sense, she is turning one very legitimate criticism about her statements into an attack on her gender, which there is no evidence presented to even illustrate that he had done any such thing. You can't even imply that. There was nothing there at all to even insinuate that he was attacking her gender. Is this how Guild Wars 2 devs are going to attack content creators that focus on their games when they criticize them? Is this how it's going to be? Is Jessica Price going to be rewarded for this kind of behavior? Is this how it's going to be? Are other Guild Wars 2 content creators going to just let this go? Because I hope they don't. I hope that they actually say something about this. And for the record, Deroir said that he retracted his comment. He should have never done that. He should have fought this, because this is a very dangerous thing to go. This is a very dangerous thing to go down, as I've said. What is to say that they can't attack another critic of Guild Wars 2 with this kind of attack? What is to say they will not go after me in the same way? Or Balgotter, or some other Guild Wars 2 content creator, or a game critic? What if Jesse Cox decides that he's going to focus a little bit on this whole thing? What will she say to him? Or Wow Krendor, or anybody else? This would make me not want to play Guild Wars 2, because if I have a concern about something's going on in the game and I choose to express it on the Reddit or to one of the people on Twitter, is this how they're going to react to me? Is this how Peter Freeze is going to react to me if I go and I say, hey, I believe that MMORPGs can have these kinds of characters which will increase the immersion effect on MMORPGs, and it has been done in single player games in RPGs. Remember, she didn't just say MMORPGs as a subsection of the genre, she says RPGs as a whole at one point, which basically means single player RPGs as well. And we have seen that, although it may not have been well done at the end of the day, Mass Effect sure as hell proved that it could be done if done correctly. And yeah, BioWare screwed the pooch on a little bit of it, but you could say that they were on the right track. Why can't MMORPGs have that sort of thing? And more to the point, is there an admission that there are constraints within the Living Stories narrative design? What if they know there are problems with that design and they need to change it, and instead of deciding to try to change it, they are going to attack people who are saying that they need to change it? This is something that I feel should not be defended. I feel as though this is something that needs to be focused on, and that's why I want to make this video. I want for whoever was the content creator to take back his apology, because I do feel as though he was on the right path and he did absolutely nothing wrong. I challenged the Guild Wars 2 dev team to retract this whole statement and to issue Deroir an apology, although I don't think that's ever going to happen, given the nature of the tweets that are going on right now. I also want to challenge those people who feel as though that to hold Jessica Price accountable. On the whole, she should be suspended. If it was up to me, she should be fired immediately. This is behavior that should never be implemented in any game development studio ever. She should not be blocking people, fans of the game on Twitter. She should be more forthcoming, and when somebody issues a fair criticism, as Deroir does, she should be able to respectfully answer those things without resorting to ad hominem attacks as she has done. And more to the point, even though I do believe that she has some things wrong, that can actually incite a well thought out discussion if she allows it to happen. It could actually spark a good discussion, but she chose to go this route instead. Don't dare criticize me or I'm going to label you as a misogynist. And I'm never going to actually address what you have stated. Those were fair points that he made. Fair points. And she should have the answer to those. And she should never be allowed to take on the attitude that she has. This is not just a normal rando on the internet. This is somebody who has respected your game, respected you, respected everyone within your community, and was just trying to give a constructive critique about what you had said. And this is how you respond to them? By not only throwing it back in their faces like, we don't want your critique, this is private. If you wanted it private, why make it public in the first place? But we're going to throw the sexism card on you. We're going to throw the misogyny label at you. We're going to throw these ad hominem attacks that have absolutely nothing to do with what you said or did, and then fail to even address your actual points. If that's the way that they're going to treat people, then there is no reason why we should be playing their games, period. Unless they rectify this, then their stock is going to go way down. Peter Freeze was just making it worse by adding the whole mansplaining thing, which, again, that had nothing to do with what Deroir wanted to say. He made no reference to her gender at all. And the absolute only reason why he responded to a female who brought up those points, because it was a female who brought up those points. If it was a male who brought up those points, he would have done the exact same thing. Why? Because he had an issue with the points that were addressed. Had nothing to do with whether or not she was male or female. Had nothing to do with it at all, but she chose to play the cards that she played, and instead of trying to rectify the situation, the other ArenaNet devs chose to double down on the whole thing and make it even worse than what it should be in the first place, which is nothing. This should never have happened. The second that she said this to another fan of the game, a potential customer of the game, somebody who paid money to play not only the games, but the 2 expansion packs. If this is how they treat paying customers, then I could see people taking their money elsewhere and just not bothering with the game anymore. This is a really abhorrent thing to not only do, but to defend and double down on and make the situation worse. She should be reprimanded immediately. She should be taken to task immediately by those people who have a control over whether or not she still has a job there. Sorry to those people who subscribe to my channel who are Guild Wars 2 fans, but I do not think that this should be just thrown under the rug. This needs to be addressed and she needs to be called out upon. Even in games that you like, if somebody is doing something wrong, you need to address it. And I do believe this needs to be addressed. Hopefully the right thing happens. And yes, this will be followed up upon. My name is Shitty Shadow. That just happened.